everyone. Good evening and welcome to this session. So for those of you who've been in the previous session, the topic is the same, but hopefully we'll have different perspectives. We have a different panel this time. So the discussion topic is about where is the killer 5G use case. For those of us who were here last year, 5G was formally launched by the Honorable Prime Minister, and then, it was a very exciting time. There was a topic about what are the use cases. In fact, all the booths, in the expo last year had use cases like agriculture, education, healthcare, IoT, and so on. But it's been 1 year now. We've had about 100 million plus subscribers of 5G. Yet, I think in terms of the offtake, the adoption, and so on, it's not caught on like fire, right? So the intent today is to hear from those in the industry about why that is. There's obviously some good news. Like I said, 100 million subscribers already, among the fastest rollouts in the world in terms of 5G rollouts. And we finally caught up with the rest of the world, and next year with the ITO conference here, we might even be setting the standards for 6G. So a lot of positives to take away. However, I think I was speaking to Mr. Ganesh, offline, that all the opcos have invested significantly on 5G capex, right? And we're reaching the end of the capex cycle. By about March 2024, the capex will taper down. So the question is, who's going to pay for all this, right? And that's what the use cases are important for. What we'll do now is, I'll welcome the panel on stage. We're very fortunate to have a very experienced and diverse panel who will give us different perspectives about 5G, what is their take on it, where they see 5G really adding value or transforming different sectors or experiences for consumers and so on. So first off, I'll call Mr. Ganesh Lakshminarayan. He is the CEO of Airtel Business from Bharti Airtel. Mr. Ganesh, please join me on stage. Next up, I'd like to invite Mr. Arnab Das. He's the VP of Advanced Connectivity and Engineering at Capgemini. Next, Mr. Hirday Vikram. He's the Chief Sales and Marketing Officer of NextWeb Technologies. And next is Mr. Prashant Upadhyay. He's the VP of Technology at TrueMinds. Welcome, everyone, and great to have you here. So like I said, we have a very diverse panel. We have a representative from, the opcos, like I said, who've spent all the capex, and now they're very keen to see a good use case to monetize it. We've had veterans from the industry who've been with, Hughes and, associated names for Hughes for several years, and now are in Capgemini and TrueMinds. And we've had, Mr. Hirday, who had a very interesting journey in terms of helping build a lot of India's supercomputers, so who are on the application side, right? So we'll hear some very different and complementary perspectives from them. So what I'd like to start with is probably hear from each of them in turn about taking a stock check, right? It's been 1 year out since 5G was launched. What have been some areas where we've seen some implementation, adoption happening? How does it coexist with other technologies, right? So we've just about finished 4G when 5G came along. And then we have other technologies like IoT, we've had cloud, we have a lot of other technologies coming in, right? So how is 5G coexisting, and what are the different roles that 5G will play vis-a-vis the other technologies? And from then, personally, what are the use cases they're excited about, right? So maybe, in the same sequence, Mr. Ganesh, you want to start off with.
Yeah. Everybody has 5G. Your bandwidth has gone up. Your bill have remained the same. Your bills have remained the same. So it's gone up as well. Good. Then you're paying for 5G. That's a killer use case. No, I think on a serious note, this is a big investment. If you look back at 4G, I'm not sure whether we asked the question, where is the killer 4G use case when we launched 4G. But it did transform our lives, right? Today, you can't imagine living without 4G, without data. Which is how you do exercise online, how you get teaching done online. The killer 4G use cases actually work from home. That's a killer 4G use case. We're all sitting, working from home, doing video conference, which we could have never done if 4G wasn't there. So, I mean, our hope is that 5G use case is just around the corner. We don't know that yet, but from our vantage point, one we are having a lot of hope for is this fixed wireless access. The 60% of the country still does not have fiber. So hopefully 5G will help us bring high-speed bandwidth to that 60%, which we are launching now. I mean, Airtel has launched it. So we will expand that, and hopefully that will be an important one customer experience for underserved people today in terms of data, but also will make us some money. On the B2B side, we are seeing some green shoots. We already have implemented about 5 5G private networks. There are some significant problems we are solving for manufacturing and distribution companies, ports, mines. But this is early stage. I think this is early stage. The consumer B2C killer use case is not there, but there are definitely signs of B2B use cases which are coming up.
So thanks for that, Ganesh. I'm audible at the back. When I was standing at the back, I was facing some challenges hearing the panel members, but hopefully am I audible at the back? All right, sounds good. Okay, so I was listening to Ganesh, and I can understand your pain, Ganesh, and you know, all the R&D guys and 3GPP says 5G is the solution. And then Ganesh asks, but what was the problem? So that's the crossroads we are at. What can you possibly do with, 10 Gbps, which you can't do with 1 Gbps? That's a question which everybody is asking. So here I go, Ganesh, and I'm going to tell you what you can do with 10 Gbps, which you cannot with 1. Are you ready for that, guys? We're talking about the 5G use cases, so let me give you some, all right? And you might throw them into the dustbin, but nevertheless, I'll still spin them. I'm from TrueMinds, and I'm a core R&D guy, so I write code for the 5G core, right? So I just took my creative hat. I was thinking for the past few days when Chaitanya contacted me for this panel discussion. I said, okay, just leave the code aside and just put on a creative hat and see what kind of 5G use cases can be there. So let me begin with one, and that is drone. Now you'll say everybody's talking about drones and all that, but I'm not talking just, out of my hat. I actually own a drone. I recently bought a couple of drones. One is a normal drone. It's a DJI Mini 3 Pro, right, which you can take up and then it clicks the photos and, and it's a lot of fun. You can go to my YouTube channel and watch those videos. But the second one which I'm excited about, and that is an FPV drone. Now what's an FPV drone? An FPV drone is a first-person view drone. It has 3 components. One is the drone itself, which has a camera. The second is the VR goggles which you wear, and I own all that, and I've flown that. And then you see what the drone sees in your goggles. And then you have a motion controller in your hand. And then you fly the drone. You control it. You can go through the windows of a car if they are open. You go around the trees. You can hoop around with that drone. You can go high. You can go low. And you see that on your VR goggles. It's an immersive experience. It's an out-of-the-body experience. And once Indians get addicted to this drone, everybody will be flying drones, I promise you, instead of kites on Rakhi and on 15th of August. And if we reach there, I'll tell you why 5G will be helpful over here. You need to, what's a 5G use case, killer use case need? You need high throughput, you need low latency, and you need to solve a practical human need. That practical human need is a drone once we get addicted to it. Why? Because you need to have stream of data coming in terms of the images back to your VR goggle. If it doesn't come, it's no good. You'll crash the drone. You need to have very low latency from your motion controller. I move the motion controller like this. The drone should immediately move, otherwise it will crash. And even today, with the drone which I have to put an SD card on the drone to store the images over there, because it cannot get me back the data in the real time to produce a high-quality image on my base station site. Therefore, I propose to you, Ganesh, that encourage everybody to buy the drones, implement a private 5G network on that drone, and it can stream the data live to me. Even if I lose a drone, or if I know that the drone will never come back because I've taken it over a volcano, I'll not lose my footage in 4K, and I'm getting it back to me. It's a classic use case. which, you can get the Indians addicted to it and put 5G on that, and there you go. Come on, guys, we need some encouragement out here. Chaitanya, can I go with another use case?
Absolutely.
All right. Now, let's say you want to learn car driving. So you have those Dahiya car motors and Sonu car motors going on. Let me spin up another use case. Why do I need a guy to sit by my side while learning a car? I've got a connected car, and I can just dial up someone out there as a virtual car instructor for me. He can control the car. He can put the brakes on the car, and he can see exactly what I'm seeing, and he can help me learn driving a car. Again, he needs low latency, he needs high throughput, because he wants to see what I'm seeing, and of course, if he's braking the car, it should stop, right? This is another use case. Now, you might say that this is going too much. Learning a car is too dangerous and all that. Men have two fears, so let's water it down. Men have two fears. The first fear I'm not going to talk about over here because it's a family show, Chaitanya, isn't it? The second fear the men have is whether they can do parallel parking or not. Now, suppose I want to learn parallel parking, and if my car is connected, I can hire a virtual instructor, go secretly to a place, and he can tell me exactly how to do a parallel parking. He can control the car, he can guide me, again, high throughput, low latency. Even if I've learned the car, for the first few rides, I feel confident when I have a navigator with me, isn't it? All of us need a navigator because I'm too scared because I've just learned the car driving. Why can't I hire a navigator who's virtually there for me? Please be with me for the first few rides. Tell me if I'm missing my lanes or if something's coming behind me and I'm not watching it. That virtual operator, the virtual navigator can be connected to me through, not in this case private 5G, public 5G. And I'll feel confident. And I can hire him on demand. It'll create jobs. It'll give you a killer use case for 5G. And there you go, Ganesh. Why not, I say? I have some more use cases, but that's later. Thank you, guys.
Hello. Okay. So that was I think that was intended to shake you up after a little bit of a long session and a little bit of a long drawn discussion and just coming back from tea, etc. But really coming back to the topic, the killer app, which seems to be suggesting that it's a singular thing which somebody needs to find magically. But really picking up on the concept behind what Prashant was really talking about, drones and virtual assistant. The beauty about 5G, or the most interesting thing about 5G, unlike 4G or certainly unlike 3G, is 5G inculcates very fundamentally the concept of platforms, which means it is not a closed box which very specialized technology providers can take and deploy, and there's a network, and only those technology providers or a few others can run it. And if you have to launch a service on it, create a service, deploy it, do the service monetization, it is only a small ecosystem, largely vendors who control it. 5G has really democratized it. I think many of you probably have heard terms like 5G service-based architecture when it comes to the core. On the radio network side, 5G is opening up and there is Open RAN, etc. What does all this really mean? It means that all the data that is available in the network, all the functions that when do you connect to a user, what is the quality of service you give to the user, when can I predict that there will be a bunch of users, they will need a certain type of service, all of this information is available today in an open and democratic manner driven by standards, which means one can really deploy a platform on top and expose that platform through a marketplace or through network as a service or any kind of service that operators can conjure up, and we will discuss it in the next part, which brings in innovative people, the creative people like Prashant, and you never know which one or which small organization or a startup will design such an application which can truly use the power of information that is available in a network, which 5G by its architecture makes available, right? So the best thing here for 5G, you probably don't need to look for a killer application. You probably need to design the networks, design services which make the network available to creative application developers, and that momentum, that growth of the ecosystem, the pricing model, who makes the money in the application eco chain, what does the operator get, what does the application provider get, this is what will drive the consumption of 5G. This is how, if you look at it in 4G, what really happened, the network quality improved a lot from 3G, but then OTT, over-the-top application providers came, people like Netflix and all kinds of video services, YouTube on the go and etc. They're getting all the subscribers, they're getting all the valuation on NASDAQ, etc. The operators are, saying, well, we just remain nice plumbers, instead of 3G having a small pipe, we have put a fatter pipe in 4G. 5G truly gives the opportunity to operator to design services where they can take a share of that. The applications need not always be purely OTT. And and that is what will generate the revenue. And you don't need one superhuman to come in and say, I am the killer app, and operators will only make money out of it. That will not happen, right? So that was my point. Platformization and 5G technology allows you to do it, and that is the biggest hope that is driving, strategy of operators to go from 4G to 5G. If you stay with 4G, you will never be able to do it. So that's one of the things.
Thank you. So first of all, while the other fellow panelists were, presenting their thoughts, especially when Prashant was speaking, I thought that I should Google that if the fellow panelist is quite impressive and capable of overshadowing you, how should you behave? So I thought that I should check how should I behave. But anyways, I'll carry on the way I had thought that I'm going to present my thoughts. Yeah, I'm Hriday Vikram. I'm the Chief Sales and Marketing Officer with Network Technologies. So although Chaitanya has introduced me, I belong to a company who have produced some of the fastest supercomputers in the country. So yes, there is also one of our, identification for us. But apart from that, we are also one of the OEMs in the history of India who have produced the full-fledged 5G ORAN, or a private 5G solution. And that's how I think we have gained some experience, some knowledge in this space. So based on that only I'm going to speak about. And anyways, my fellow panelists have got much more information, much more knowledge compared to me. So yeah, so first of all, since we have already discussed about 5G use cases, and especially the word added killer 5G use cases and all. So as I mentioned, we belong to private 5G space, and I would like to have the liberty to speak a little or touch upon that part. So coming from, from that standpoint, I would like to share that there is also a piece called private 5G that exists. I hope many of us are aware of it. And if those who are not aware, I'll try to cover some details about it. What is it and what is all that? So first of all, India is actually catching up very fast to adopt private 5G. Let me just put it in a very simple way. And as Arnab has very rightly pointed out that, typically what is the major revolution with 5G is that it has democratized the complete space. And I think that is the biggest contribution, I would say, of 5G to this industry. This is how I see it. And the best part is that although I may not be aware of those killer use cases, I will only touch upon those use cases we have experienced while remaining in touch with the customers who are talking to us. And I'm going to share inputs basis on that only. So number one is that the use case what we have seen is that the campus-wide network is something which is the simplest use case. We are, finding on daily basis, we are interacting with some of the largest enterprises in the country. And enterprises are clearly saying, please automate our campuses, whether it is a manufacturing organization, whether it is an IT/ITES organization. I mean, this is something agnostic to that. They say automate our, campuses. If some organizations have got, autonomous vehicles, they expect those autonomous vehicles to be run on that private 5G. If some of those have got really large warehouses, they say that help us automate that as well. Then apart from that, they say that some of those say that we have got large number of UEs or devices which are required to be connected. You simply get all that connected to a private 5G network. This is use case number one. We are experiencing, we are finding solution, and we are already in fact providing solution to some of the large enterprises. Second use case is that what I have so far seen is that the way government of India has basically took a very good initiative by announcing that there will be a concept of private 5G labs. I think this is something which is quite a thought after step of government of India. Why so? Because they have given an opportunity for the evolvement of RIC, which is called RAN Intelligent Controller. And that is something which is going to help build lot more use cases in coming time. So we are on one hand ready with the private 5G labs as a solution, but at the same time we encourage the thought, who had thought from government of India that there should be a concept of 100 plus private 5G labs. So we see this is use case number 2, which is needed immediately on immediate basis. Apart from that, definitely, the regular ones which are in everyone's mind who belong to the industry is that defense needs it. Apart from that, traffic steering is what is right now the need of the hour, and people are finding that private 5G can come out and give a solution for it. So these are the major use cases we have found. But yes, nevertheless, there are a lot many more use cases which are mushrooming. I think this is just the beginning. There is lot more to come. So this is how I would like to summarize. The use cases may not be the killer ones, but yes, immediately required by the industry, especially the Indian market, I would say. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, panelists, for a very interesting sort of opening statement. And Prashant surely woke up the entire audience here. So thank you for that. So my name is Chaitanya. I'm a partner with KPMG in the consulting team. And we are the knowledge partners for IMC, right? So we've released a publication at this IMC as well, where we talk about the impact of 5G and different topics as well, right? So first of all, 5G in a market like India has tremendous potential, right? Our projections are we will easily exceed 600 million subscribers of 5G, right, by 2030. Right now, we have 800 million internet users. Of that, a big proportion will migrate, right? So that is a projection based on past trends, right? So the question really is, what is the trigger point? What is the inflection point? What will help really accelerate the transition? So the way we look at it, there's two use cases, right? The B2C and B2B. On the B2C side, all of us have, smartphones with speed test, right? If you do a speed test right now, I did it just before this. I'm an Airtel customer, so, it clocked at 950 Mbps, right? Is the download speed right now in this site, right? So that's pretty much equivalent to your home broadband speeds, right? Those of you who have fiber, that is, right? So imagine that this is now available using 5G to every smartphone who subscribes, or the FWA, right, the air fiber equivalent, right? So that becomes a reliable, high quality, fast 5G for everyone, right? And that really enables all sort of business models. For example, work from home, right? In COVID, bandwidth was a lifesaver, but you can do a lot more. Telemedicine, you can do, we saw high video intensive applications, connected cars, etc. A lot of things are possible, right? Now, on the B2B side, there's a similar opportunity as well. So one is in terms of manufacturing, a lot of factories and manufacturers are now implementing IoT solutions, right, which have a significant amount of data capture from every connected device. Now, all of that has to flow in, has to be aggregated, has to be analyzed, and has to be actioned on, right? Significant potential. Similarly, healthcare, where you're transmitting tremendous amounts of data. It could be image data, it could be scans or diagnostics and whatever, right? So you have a lot of throughput of data flowing on. So you can create lots of use cases. And interestingly, at every technology, right, there is, I think Adna mentioned this, there are the companies that really benefit from this. So there was a recent example I read about refrigeration, right? We all have refrigerators at home. So the companies that invented refrigerators didn't really make too much money, right? The device manufacturers made some money, but the real value was captured by the Coca-Colas of the world, the ice cream manufacturers. Long shelf life gives a lot of value to other companies, which are, formerly perishable. Similarly with mobility, right? So the smartphone companies, the manufacturers, the hardware haven't really captured value. The software platforms on top have created value, be it Netflix, be it Uber, Airbnb, you name it, right? So the question really is, with 5G, what are the use cases, right? What can really unlock that value? And with such a big user base, such a large opportunity of transforming industries, the question really is, how does this all fit in, right? And previously, if you've been to the Airtel booth, you'll see that we also have OneWeb, which Airtel has, which is launching satellite connectivity, right? So on that note, Ganesh, maybe the question to you is about, so where does 5G fit into the portfolio of different technologies you're already offering, portfolio of services and offerings?
Yeah, I think, can you guys hear me? Yeah. So if you look at our company, we have kept multiple forms of communication open. So we've got 2G still going. We've got 4G. We will continue to keep 4G alive for quite a bit of time. We have 5G. We have NB-IoT, which will power about 250 million smart meters in the country. So there is multiple forms of communication we keep going. On the 5G side, we touched upon two benefits of 5G. One is latency and bandwidth. There are two other benefits of 5G. Any of you? Two other benefits? Anybody who knows what are the other benefits? Okay. So one is, it is the density of devices it can support. 5G can support about 1 lakh devices in a square kilometer. The most populated city of Mumbai is 76,000 people in a square kilometer. The second thing is that the ability of 5G to slice spectrum, just to give a slice of spectrum, which is a private spectrum, is much more easier to do in 5G than 4G, right? So if you go to our lab, we've got a 5G as a backpack, private 5G as a backpack. If you imagine that you are in a disaster situation, a fire or a flooding, and the whole internet had to be shut down, you need the firefighters, the first responders to have a reliable, secure network to communicate not only voice, which they can do today with walkie-talkie, but images. Now this creates a 5G private network in a square kilometer radius, and 400 odd people can talk to each other, send messages to each other, because we are able to create a slice of the spectrum. Today, if you look at these cameras behind, the way they communicate is there is a fiber running, right? With 5G, we could create a slice of the spectrum nationally where all these people can carry you don't have to carry their big vans with satellite dish perched on top. They could actually create their devices. The unfortunate part is these devices are not 5G ready soon, but they will be 5G ready soon. They can actually communicate high definition video with very low latency on that slice of the spectrum. If you look at ambulances, 10% of the ambulances, people on the ambulance die. And every ambulance, if it is fitted with life-saving meters, images, sensors, while you are on an ambulance or a patient is on the ambulance on the way to the hospital, those devices can be transmitting real-time data. In fact, a doctor can look at the patient as they are on the way by creating this slice of the spectrum, right? And if you look at the density of devices, the drones which will come on board, the automated vehicles which will come on board, will really make use of this 5G thing, right? So I don't think we should, everybody, I think there's a little bit of a hype behind 5G. So everybody is saying, where is the 5G use case? But the 4G use cases didn't come as soon as 4G came on board. 4G use cases came much later. The ability to order pizza, hail a cab, do Swiggy, Zomato, whatever you guys do now with 4G came much later. And I think it's been a big revolution in a way. I sincerely believe this will come. I think 5G has got some very unique advantages which will be exploited by the very smart startup ecosystem you have, right? I'll just give you this example. Today we talk about a lot of IoT, smart meters. You know what is the most successful IoT use case which has made money for a lot of people? Can you guys guess? which use case you think has made a lot of money in IoT? No. No, not yet. You see this, you pay this UPI payments. It says 10 rupees is paid on Paytm, Phone Pay, all of that. That's the simplest IoT use case, which every UPI, Paytm of the people are making so much money on, because it makes the job of the seller much easier, right? Because while you're serving you, message keeps paying. They don't have to check on this. I think the ingenuity of Indian startup will bring some very interesting use cases. We are very hopeful.
Thank you, Ganesh. That was very interesting. In fact, I was reminded of one more IoT use case which a lot of people perhaps unknowingly actually experience it. Those of you who have a water purifier at home, they nowadays have an IoT built in, which tells both you that the filter needs to be replaced and the company also, right? So it becomes more proactive instead of you having to call them. So I think it's just a matter of, like you say, imagining the use case and using the ingenuity. I think next maybe Arnab, similar question to you, right? So when you talk to enterprise customers, right? Again, they have a variety of investments to divide their budgets into, right? Which include the sensors like the IoT, it includes the platform, analytics, it includes cloud, it includes multiple things, right? So how do you see 5G coexist in the investment portfolio of an enterprise?
Hello? Okay. So the funny part is, the enterprises, yeah, personally they would all read tech journals, they know 5G, the buzz, but when they come into their offices, the chief CIO or chief product officer, chief of operations, they are looking at their problem statements from how do I bring in business efficiency? How do I do my cash to lead generation smoother? How do I avoid wastages and loss of material in transit, etc.? This is the language they speak. And when we go, we are all from 5G background. We know what Open RAN is. He writes the code for UPF, which is the data plane of 5G. We go and talk about private network. It'll give you 6 Gbps, the latency is less than 10 milliseconds. We can do precise positioning of 10 centimeters. And they're kind of, my problem statement is when a truck comes into my warehouse, I need the turnaround time to be brought down by 30%, and you can take a share of that optimization if it works. This is the language they speak. So the main thing there, to really, the technology supports, but the way we position the technology, the 5G as a connectivity, especially to enterprises, you have to speak the business language of enterprises. Whatever be it, it's a warehousing company, it's a consumer product company, it's a, it's like a retail company. And that is the key learning, which, took us a while because we had decks and solutions. This is a private network, and this is the time we can save you to bring the connectivity up by doing automation. That doesn't work for enterprises. If you're talking to an oil and gas company, it's a different value proposition that you have to pitch. So it's all in there. Definitely, another question that comes, because we are in the transition, because Wi-Fi and 4G is widely deployed, and 5G is coming in. So very rarely you will find a greenfield situation where there is no form of connectivity and you're going and proposing that I'll set up a network which is 5G based and it can do XYZ things. They will typically have questions like, I already am using Bluetooth, Zigbee, Z-Wave, low powered, non-cellular, LoRaWAN. The guy before you did a system integration of Wi-Fi 6 or Wi-Fi 7 in my campus. So in the brownfield context, what really can 5G bring in, So do you go and say, no, rip and replace, and I'll give you, instead of 80 Wi-Fi access points, you'll have 2 5G base station or 2 antennas in your campus, simpler. So you really have to present the case for 5G in the context of the enterprise, and to really show the business outcomes and values that it can bring. And that is, as Capgemini, our interactions of, trying to push and generate our business of doing 5G system integration, et cetera, in enterprises, really that is the strategy. And we are finding some very good traction out of that, especially in a couple of industry verticals, like Asian ports, for example, that's one area, where we could show that in a certain perimeter, They have around 370 cameras with wired connection and some on Wi-Fi. That the efficiency and the number of places you need to place cameras when you have 5G as, continuously taking the video and putting it down into the central server for doing a surveillance application for automatic intrusion detection and all of that. You could bring down the number of devices that is actually procured and deployed and operated in that same perimeter. So those are the kind of things, and you have to show the business outcomes, efficiencies that you can bring in, and really try and help the enterprise to see the ROI from deploying 5G. That's, I think, the key thing there.
Okay, great, thank you. I think we heard a very interesting point about, when 4G came in, right? Nobody was talking about use cases. But right now we're talking about use cases, right? One of the differences is that in 4G, we were a laggard, right? We were deploying it much after the rest of the world. So by the time we had actually implemented, a lot of the business models were already proven, right? So it was just a matter of adopting them in the India context. But in 5G, we are pretty much on par with the world. So in fact, we are also discovering the way as much as the rest of the world. And we heard Prashant talk about some interesting use cases. So, in Abu Dhabi in June, I had the opportunity to sit in a driverless car, which had a safety driver, but still it was a fully autonomous car. And I think the possibilities are truly, truly exciting. But I would really not trust a driverless car on Indian roads, that's for sure. But I think, Prashant, from your perspective, right, you are, a very hands-on, deep in the weeds from a code, and you're a classic geeky person, right? So you have a drone, you have a VR glass, etc., right? So what are some things, like you said, you mentioned drones, for example, right? What are some other things that, 5G, only 5G can do, which 4G can never dream of, right? Anything else that comes to mind?
I was just waiting for my turn, so I've got my turn now. All right, so thanks, Yatana, and Ganesh, thanks for just warming up the show, and you gave some very good use cases. If it's not copyrighted, I can use it in the other panel discussions, so thanks a lot. Now, I've got another use case for you, and that is defense. Now, look at our country. We are surrounded by hostile neighbors, aren't we? We have a country beginning with P, we have a country beginning with C, and there you are. And what happens now? The missiles are coming. How do you stop them? We don't have a missile defense system indigenously built which can control all those missiles. So what do? We go to Russia and buy S-400, right? That's a missile defense system. Now, why can't we develop our own? Eventually we will, I promise you we will. We can land Chandrayaan, we can build the defense system. For the moment though, let's take inspiration from S-400. What does it consist of? It consists of a radar, which paints the incoming missile or the aircraft. So, high-speed communication is required, a lot of data to be processed. Where the data has to be processed? At a command center, which is part of the S-400. So you need high-throughput data, low-latency data, and finally there's a missile launcher, right? So this command center then processes this data in real time, and then commands the missile launcher to launch the missile at a particular angle, projectile motion, again data crunching over there, and there you stop the missile. If you don't do that in real time, if you don't do it with the large crunching of data at high throughput, we'll be facing what Israel faced, right? Now, let's do one thing. Today we are buying S-400, fine. Let it work the way it works. In next 5 years, India is surely going to develop an indigenous missile defense system. There's no choice. So what do? For this communication, why can't we propose to the Indian government that use a private 5G network deployed right on the components of this network, which is the radar, the command center, and the missile launcher? Why can't we deploy a private 5G instead of building any kind of a custom, a proprietary implementation? That's another use case for you, right? Let me give you another spin. And this time, I also love stock markets and so on. So I invest sometimes. I'm not a trader. I just buy and forget. So, but I'm aware that people actually bet on the weather. You know that? They bet whether it's going to rain tomorrow or not. And of course, there's connotations, whether the temperature will be beyond a particular value tomorrow or not. And the reason is because the energy consumption will depend upon the temperature of a city. And they buy futures on that. It's called futures. They're weather futures. They're actually betting on that. And weather prediction is something which is so fickle. Why? Because it requires huge amount of data. and of course processing that data in the real time. Why can't we have sensors which are, spread out and a specialized service is created where 5G is used to number crunch this data, huge amount of data, so high throughput, low latency, and then give a value-added information to those traders who are willing to pay for it so that they can buy the futures accordingly and win in the stock market. I know, a wild use case, but a use case nevertheless, Ganesh. So there you go.
I, the second part, I would agree. The first part, if I tell you what all we are doing with the defense government, I have to arrest you and I have to arrest myself. So there is a lot going on with the defense which we can't talk about. I think the country is pretty advanced when it comes to using technology for defense, but unfortunately, that keeps under wraps. So,
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Ganesh. I think that partially answers my question. I'm excited about it. Back to you, Chaitanya.
All right. No, thank you, Prashant. Your use cases never disappoint. Thank you for that. I think, yeah, to your point about defense, right? And what is in the public domain also is that increasingly we're seeing what is called network-centric warfare with lots of drones and swarms of drones and so on. So, the data communication, data processing, and zero latency is pretty much going to be a key component of success, right? So 5G plays very well into those use cases. Prashant also mentioned an interesting thing about private 5G networks, right? So that's an area where Hriday has a lot of experience. So Hriday, in terms of private 5G networks, right? So what is the aha moment for a B2B, and who are the likely people to deploy a private 5G, and what's in it for them?
Yeah, thanks. Am I audible? Yeah. So first of all, thanks, Prashant. You again took away the responsibility from my shoulder, and you woke up all those who were sleeping. So thank you. It is now easier for me. Yeah. So coming back to you, Chaitanya, that first of all, I mean, in the private 5G space, so there are certain quite important aspects. I don't mind sharing certain points here that use cases I have touched upon already, and I can discuss one very crucial aspect, that why private 5G or even 5G driven by the ORAN concept. I'm not sure whether all of the complete audience is familiar with the term called ORAN and all. 5G is playing an important role in another way also, that it has added, as I earlier mentioned, or Arnab also mentioned, that it has democratized the whole infra and all. It has added an element of cloud also. Although, cloud is something which is, I won't say it is indispensable for the rollout of 5G, but cloud, irrespective of whether it is private cloud or public cloud, has become a part of enterprise level rollout of private 5G or even 5G. And how does it basically add value to the overall ecosystem? I think I can cover one or two points which can, which may be understood by all those who are not very familiar with the technical terms. That with the advent of ORAN or with the advent of 5G, the concept of loading your network applications in the form of microservices onto the cloud is done. Now what it does is, and how 5G is basically, doing a great value addition is, the same thing was absent in case of 4G core, by the way. So 5G is basically, the advent of 5G, something which is the major contributor for it. What it does is, your all critical microservices in a 5G infra environment are now in the cloud environment, which basically makes 5G even fault tolerant to a greater extent as well. Which means any of the microservice, if goes down, it doesn't mean whether it is private 5G or it is basically, the public 5G also driven by a ORAN concept, will make that service go down. Reason being, the cloud is an element which is adding that redundancy, fault tolerance. Definitely scalability and agility is part of it, but fault tolerance is something which is making private 5G and 5G even more popular than the 4G. And that is the reason adoption of private 5G by the enterprises, when they, try to juxtapose between private 5G and the so-called competitors of private 5G called Wi-Fi and all, although they are not competitor, by the way, their people, their enterprises will find the real value addition from private 5G or even 5G as well. And one more thing, I can quickly touch upon that as well, that people usually say that, how private 5G will really compete with Wi-Fi. By the way, they are not competitor, they complement each other. Private 5G can become the encapsulating, create an encapsulating environment for Wi-Fi, and that's how adoption of private 5G is also going to proliferate at a very fast pace. So that is, I think, important for those who are not very well aware of what is something which has been brought on table by private 5G or O-RAN concept of 5G. I think this is an important part. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Hriday. I think looking to the concluding part of this discussion, right? So maybe as a closing remark, if we could hear from each of you about what are some things you feel are holding back the rollout and adoption of 5G, and what are some things that can really accelerate it? Are there any supportive policy or regulatory, enablers which can accelerate this, as part of your closing remarks, please? Maybe Ganesh, once again, starting with you.
I'm in close period. I can't comment on policy. No, actually, I think the policy team of Airtel is very closely working with DOT. There are some backhaul use cases. There are ways to monetize telecom APIs for the monetization of this technology, which are working very closely with them. Right now, I think we are rolling it out the fastest we could. I think we would be 5,000 cities and towns as far as 5G is concerned. As you rightly said, about 100 million users will come on 5G. So we are rolling it out as fast as we could.
So thanks for that, Ganesh. So now I have to put on the intellectual face as well, because somebody's going to watch it later. So what's holding back 5G? Well, to sound pedantic, I'll give you a simple example. I talked about drones, right? Are we encouraging drones as a hobby in India? I'm not sure. Are we incentivizing? Because that's a potential 5G killer use case. Not only are we not incentivizing people to buy drones, the drone which I bought, the DJI Avatar, which is the FPV drone, cost me 1.5 lakhs. Now, who in their right mind would want to buy a 1.5 lakh drone for a hobby work which you can crash anytime and then you lose all of it with no insurance? Plus, you get the tag of buying it from DJI, which is an enemy country, It's coming from China. It's a Chinese company. So you get that stigma as well. So I think, and to give you a further example, I went to Jhansi recently, Rani Lakshmi Bai and woohoo, and I went to the fort over there from where she jumped with a horse across the wall, and the famous story. I wanted to fly my drone over there, and they wouldn't let me fly the drone over there. Apparently some security concerns. I couldn't for the life of me imagine what would be a security concern in Jhansi to fly my drone above the Rani Lakshmi Bai fort. I would say that incentivize the drone industry. Make Indians addicts of drones. They should not be flying kites, they should be flying drones. Incentivize the automotive industry. Make sure that they have 5G-enabled cars, which can be remotely controlled. Incentivize that industry. And it's not the work of DOT alone. It's a policy framework which will span across multiple ministries, and where operators can weigh in with their influence with the government and try to drive the policy framework across this. And I have another thing which I would request likes of Airtel and your friendly geos, is that 5G provides something which is additional to 4G in terms of protocol. In 4G, you have an IP connectivity. You provide an IP pipe, right? You make use of TCP and UDP over IP, and you provide the IP connectivity between the UE and the cloud servers. In 5G, you have additional two technologies beyond IP. It can provide you an Ethernet connectivity between the devices. You can be on a LAN. And not only that, you can also have a raw PDU connectivity, which means no need of Ethernet headers at all. I can send a 4-byte data on a raw PDU session, and which can be used by millions of, for example, sensors, which can send short bursts of data. And that's why Ganesh was saying that, you can really utilize the density with the amount of data which will be produced over there. Make use of this Ethernet PDU session. Make use of this raw PDU session. And I would beseech Airtel to try to figure out use cases where Ethernet PDU sessions and the raw PDU sessions can be utilized beyond the erstwhile IP connectivity which 4G was providing. I think that will give you a killer use case, will help you deploy 5G more effectively. Thank you.
Well, so that was a pretty intense opening up of the plumbing that Prashant proposed in that last bit. But the concept is something that I completely endorse, which means the concept is that the network is the infrastructure and the operators are super masters of that. What is really needed is to involve or incubate the ecosystem of application developers. And trust me, 5G absolutely supports that. Something that you asked, that what is it that you can do in 4G that you can't? So most of the traditional 4G, barring the very last phase of 4G, had no concepts, for example, to pick information from your radio network, from your transport network, and from the UV, the handset, and through an API, make an application aware of how the user will move in a certain direction and what will be in the next 1 millisecond or 10 millisecond, what will be the data requirement of that user. Imagine if this information is available to a VR application developer. They can write the most intuitive, immersive application that provides a consistent user experience for a VR headset users connected on 5G. And today that is possible by not any proprietary technology. There are functions like NEF, network exposure functions, application function AF. Prashant probably knows all of that, he's probably coded that. Make this available to the developer ecosystem. So launch services which allow developers to come on board and develop applications that make use of the information. It helps the operator. You can probably get a share of the revenue of the developer. It's exactly like the AWS and Azure concept, where developers create applications for the cloud and it gets monetized between the cloud service provider and the application developer and the consumer, the actual enterprise. That is absolutely possible in 5G. So don't stop at providing the best connectivity with 900 Mbps uplink, downlink, but also launch services that allows the developers to use the 5G ecosystem. And that is when the consumption will really go up. Whether it's a consumer application, whether it is a B2B application, it will happen. So this is, I think, the next step after the base stations and the KPIs and site reliability engineering of all the sites. After all of that is working, that is still the plumbing of 5G. Launch services that allow developers to come in. That's what I would say can really put the killer application find on turbo, I would say.
Thank you. So I think Arnav, Prashant, and Ganesh have already covered all the major points from 5G standpoint. So I can come back to private 5G now. So, from regulatory compliance perspective, I can easily say that there is one thing which is holding back private 5G rollout, a convenient rollout actually, is that enterprises especially, and even the other type of organizations, be it PSUs, CPSUs, state PSUs, are not very well aware of how to tackle with the problem of having an allocation of spectrum. Because earlier it was told by regulatory bodies that the access will be given directly to the enterprises, but in May 2023 that decision was overturned, and DOT basically came out with the decision that this is because of the legal framework of India, it cannot be done. So that's the reason it is decided that the allocation can be done through the large telcos. But this awareness has still not been spread among the organization, among the enterprises who are touted to be the large users, and they are still in a dilemma how to start with finding the allocation of spectrum and all. That is number one. I think if more clarity is brought to public, the adoption can be made a little more quicker, I can say. This is number one. Number two is that in context with private 5G rollout, there is since many of us might not be aware that what all the major components like RU, CU, DU, RAN, core, these are the, major components of private 5G as such. So indigenization of these components is required to be brought in as a condition or say, or, as a mandate by Government of India, because that will help flourish the ecosystem of private 5G in India as well. Because as I mentioned, it has already democratized the whole IT infrastructure, the infrastructure of 5G. Now, since it is already giving that liberty to multiple organizations to collaborate and provide private 5G solution, this is the time. If the indigenization is mandated, this will help flourish the complete ecosystem. So I think with this, I complete my submission. These are the 2 points in my understanding which can really bring, rollout a little more quicker. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. This has been a very, very, thought-provoking discussion. Unfortunately, out of time, so we can't do audience questions, but I'll just take a minute to sum up. I think the topic of 5G is, there's a little bit of hype, obviously, but there's a lot of excitement as well. First of all, the increasing number of devices which allow people to use 5G in a big way. We already have mobility. We heard about drones, and with the Make in India policy, hopefully we'll have a situation where we can encourage more drone production. Likewise, Apple launched the Vision Pro, the virtual reality kind of headsets. That's a form factor which can encourage 5G usage. Similarly, connected vehicles. Increasingly, most of the vehicles now, the cars coming up, etc., they have a screen, so that's a monetizable real estate. So there'll be applications built on it. Similarly, we talked about B2B, right? So a lot of ways of consuming 5G kind of applications. The second was applications itself, right? So we talked about different applications, including defense. We talked about healthcare, connected vehicles again, lots of other use cases, right? Similarly, on the enterprise side, lots of use cases. But I think Adnan made an important point. Just like what is called the iPhone movement, right? There's an app for everything. So we will need the developers, the startups, etc., to also be creative and brainstorm on what are the applications they can imagine, they can think of, right, to create, which can leverage the 5G technology. The last part is adoption as well. I think all of us, are now used to a subscription kind of economy. Once you get used to subscribing to something, it is very hard to go back to the old days, right? It's true of everything, right? Once you've become a 5G subscriber, you will never go back to being a 4G subscriber. Once you're a paid Netflix subscriber, you'll not go back to the free tier, etc., right? So it's about getting, the first wave of adoption going. And once it is there, you can see expansion in terms of the usage. So I think, like I said in the report, we've clearly articulated that, 5G and other technologies in Make in India can have up to a 1.6% contribution to our GDP. 600 plus million subscribers. So the potential is really enormous and something which is very exciting. And we're all looking forward to having the industry, the regulators, and the ecosystem collaborate, right, to make this happen. So with that, I'd like to thank my panel for a very, very enriching and energetic discussion as well. So thank you so much. So for their time and participation here. You can give it to a friend of yours. वो बैग में दे थे
the photos का करा लेंगे बाद में we will pack it and give it in bag.
अच्छा okay. Ganesh, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Prashant, thank you so much. Arnab, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Sudhir, thank you so much.
Thank you for being a great moderator.
Sure.